They said my land was community property. I laughed until the bulldozers rolled in and the HOA started pouring concrete for 96 brand new homes. Imagine watching strangers build driveways and mailboxes on land your grandfather left you, while officials told you it was all approved. For months, I stayed silent. No yelling, no lawsuits, just watching them dig deeper into their mistake. Because what they didn't know was that every inch they built on was still mine. And when the day came, I walked into court with one piece of paper that ended it all. For most of my life, that stretch of land on the south side of Willow Creek was our family's anchor. 100 acres of rolling hills, oak trees, and an old ranch house my grandfather built in 1968. He used to say, "Land remembers its owner." I didn't realize how true that was until decades later. When my father passed, the deed transferred cleanly to me. I moved to town but kept the ranch, my escape from the noise. Then one spring morning, I saw something strange at the gate. A new sign read, "Future site of Willow Glen Estates, 96 homes, community pool and recreation center." At first, I thought it was a prank. My land was still zoned agricultural. But when I drove down the old dirt path, bright orange survey stakes crisscrossed the fields. Within days, crews were digging test pits and marking property lines that weren't theirs. I called the county clerk. They confirmed my boundaries hadn't changed. The deed was still in my name. So how was a developer planning an entire subdivision on it? A week later, a man in a tailored suit knocked on my door. Thomas Kane, from Silverleaf Development. Polite, confident, the kind of man who thought paperwork could erase ownership. He handed me a brochure showing neat little houses where my barn and pasture stood. "Construction starts this spring," he said. "We'll compensate existing property owners." I looked him in the eye and said, "There's only one owner. Me." His smile didn't move. "Our records show otherwise," he replied. "A transfer option from the previous owner." The previous owner, I told him, has been dead 5 years. He blinked, promised to clarify it, and drove off. Days later, the heavy machinery arrived. The county inspectors waved it through to no one stopped them. So I didn't either. Instead, I started documenting everything: deeds, tax receipts, aerial photos, proof that the land was mine. I knew they'd come to regret it. Within months, new roads were paved, houses were built, and families moved in. Then came the letters, plain white envelopes, stamped Willow Glen HOA. The first one politely requested that I remove all non-conforming structures, meaning my barn and fences. The second arrived in red. Final notice, HOA violation. They fined me for $1,800 for unauthorized land use. A lien they warned could follow. They actually believed they had authority over me. That's when I realized these people thought they owned my land. Soon, trucks appeared on weekends, dropping materials near my property line. They built sidewalks, mailboxes, and even a gate across the main access road with a keypad labeled "Residents Only." They had literally walled me out of my own ranch. Then one afternoon, the HOA president herself showed up. Carol Pierce, immaculate hair, heels sinking into the dirt, clipboard under her arm. "Mr. Lawson," she said sweetly, "you're in violation of several community regulations." I asked her, "Did you even check who owns this land?" She smiled. "The HOA governs all properties within the community boundaries." Then, she handed me another envelope. The fine had doubled. I didn't argue. I just watched her drive away. And that's when I decided to let them finish what they started. I stayed silent as they built 96 homes, each one sitting squarely on land I still legally owned. They held HOA meetings, issued fines, collected dues, and bragged about their flourishing community. They even called me the holdout, the stubborn neighbor who refused to join. Then, one morning, a sheriff's deputy showed up with a civil summons. The HOA was suing me for non-compliance with their bylaws. I smiled as I took the envelope. Finally, they'd given me exactly what I needed: a chance to bring the truth into court. The day of the hearing, The courthouse buzzed like a hive. Carol sat in the front row beside her attorney, their table stacked with binders labeled Willow Glen v. Lawson. Her lawyer started confidently. Your Honor, this case is a simple matter of noncompliance. The defendant refuses to adhere to HOA regulations. Then my attorney, Grant Myers, stood up, calm, collected. Your Honor, he said. Before we proceed, one clarification. The HOA claims jurisdiction over my client's land. That assumes they own it. He held up the original deed, yellowed, sealed, and notarized in 1968. This property has never been sold, transferred, or subdivided. Mr. Lawson is the sole owner. The HOA's lawyer objected. Citing newer filings, Grant projected one of them onto the courtroom screen, filed 2 years after Mr. Lawson's father passed away, he said, and notarized by an official whose license was revoked for fraud. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Grant went on, presenting tax receipts, zoning maps, aerial photos, and every document showing that the development was built entirely on land they didn't own. The judge leaned forward. Are you saying the entire Willow Glen estate sits on the defendant's property? Grant nodded. Every square foot. Silence. Then, disbelief. The HOA lawyer stammered. Something about good faith. The judge slammed her gavel. Enough. This court recognizes Mr. Lawson as the rightful owner. All HOA authority is nullified pending further proceedings. The HOA and Silverleaf Development are liable for damages. You could hear the air leave the room. Carol buried her face in her hands. Board members whispered in panic, and I just sat there, calm, watching their empire collapse under the weight of one old deed. Outside, reporters waited on the courthouse steps that I didn't say a word. I just held up the deed. That photo went viral. A man holding the paper that destroyed an HOA.by morning. Headlines flooded the news. Court rules HOA built on stolen land. Developer accused of forgery. Man reclaims entire subdivision. Neighbors who once ignored me now wanted answers. Some apologized. Others were scared. They asked if I was going to evict them. I told them no. They weren't the problem. I went after the real culprits. Silverleaf and the HOA board that we filed new lawsuits, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy within weeks. Investigators uncovered everything. Fake notary stamps, backdated documents, and even bribes to county staff. Silverleaf CO was arrested. Carol resigned and vanished. The residents were left stunned. Their mortgages tied to land that wasn't theirs. I gave them a choice. Stay under a new lease directly with me. No HOA. No harassment. Just for use and mutual respect. Every single homeowner signed. The community changed. Overnight, the old HOA sign was repainted by neighborhood kids. That IT now read Willow Creek. Built on the truth. Months later, peace returned. The county reissued deeds. The banks fixed their paperwork, and the land finally rested. Again, when a reporter asked if I felt I'd gotten revenge, I said, no. Revenge would mean taking everything from them. Justice means giving everyone what they actually own. The truth. A year after the trial, I stood on the ridge overlooking the rooftops. 96 homes spread across the land my grandfather left me. Beside me, Grant said, you could have sold it all for millions. I smiled. Then it would have just become another Willow Glen. A few weeks later, a letter arrived, handwritten, no name. It said, you taught us what it really means to own something. Thank you. Maybe that's what this was all about. Not power, not money, freedom. Because when someone tries to take what's yours, your land, your peace, your dignity, sometimes the quietest thing you can do is let them build their own downfall. My grandfather was right. Land remembers its owner. They built their empire on a lie, and I buried it with the truth. Final outro narration. They tried to steal my land, but they built my victory instead, because sometimes the best revenge isn't taking back what's yours. It's reminding the world who it belonged to all along. If you believe in standing your ground against greed, share this story, because justice might take time, but truth always finds its way home.